Welcome back to the Altitude LED channel. In this video, we're gonna give you an in-depth walkthrough of this LED system that we just installed here in Agora Hills, California at Agora Bible Fellowship. You're gonna learn all the details of how we set up the screen configuration for these center screens you see behind me, as well as these side banner screens, and how we're able to put unique content on both of them simultaneously using ProPresenter and the Novastar MX30 processor. All of this is coming up. If you're looking to install an LED system like this at your church, but you're unsure about the costs, then download our free budgeting guide linked down below. It's gonna give you some accurate ranges on what it takes to install LED screens for the local church, and it will account for not only the equipment, but also the labor and installation costs as well, so you can have clarity when you bring that proposal to your leadership at your church. We have a very unique LED system that was installed here at Agora Hills. These are Altitude LED panels. They are the cloud panel, and they have a 1.9 millimeter pixel pitch. What I love about this setup, this is the first time I've seen it in one of our installs, is having these side portrait LED screens here. This screen is 1 meter wide by 2 meters tall. And then it's next to our center side screens. A little confusing in labeling these screens. You know what I mean. This screen is 2.5 meters wide by 1.5 meters tall. It gets us a nice 16:9 canvas for displaying slides, sermon slides, lyrics for worship, as well as any other videos or content they would like to play for the congregation. And because it has that 1.9 millimeter pixel pitch, it is high definition, so even when you're just stepping a few feet back, you're not gonna see those pixels. It just looks like a clean, crisp image. Here we are backstage. Once the video signal leaves the Mac in the deck link from front of house, we have 2 SDI video runs that go from front of house to our video processor right here. This is the MX30 by Novastar. This is a beast of a processor. You're gonna see all of its capability here in a few moments. And this allows us to then take multiple video signals, 2 of them, and map them to the various screens that you see there. And I'm actually gonna have Matt from our team at Churchfront, who programmed this LED screen, he's gonna show you in depth how he configured it in ProPresenter, as well as what it looks like in the control software for the Novastar.
So in order to send all that content from ProPresenter to your screens like this, when you're using multiple displays, you do have to get a little creative. ProPresenter isn't exactly like Resolume or some of the higher end Pro Video Player, things like that, where it's higher end, you can send multiple videos to multiple places relatively easy. You've got to get creative with it because ProPresenter really just has your stock standard layers here. So in order to do a different image to side screens, you're going to have to use one of those other layers. In this instance, we're using a prop layer when we're doing different content, and then we're just sending the media layer there when we're doing things like worship content. So let me show you how I set that up. So in your screen configuration here, I'll show you the 3 audience screens, audience displays that we have set up. We've got the lower thirds, which does go to their stream. It's a local stream. They don't actually stream to the internet here, but they have TVs all over the campus at Southern California, so it's beautiful outside. People watch the service outside all the time. We've got the LED center walls. That's what we're sending that main content to. It's the main content displays. And then the side screens. Now, you could set this up to have both of the side screens being separate and send separate content there. But again, this is where you get into having to send multiple props to different layers. You would have to actually set that up through things like audience looks, and it would get really complicated. It's much easier to handle if they're the same screen. So that's why we set it up this way. But what I'm doing is I set up a mirrored display. The total width and height of those displays, if you put them together, is 1080 by 1080. It's a perfect square. So what we did is the side screens are a 540 by 1080 screen, and it's mirrored. And what we're doing is we're sending that output to a specific section of the SDI send coming from the DeckLink Duo. So what you see here is a 540 by 1080 display, and it's being sent to the SDI output of the DeckLink Duo, but it's sent at a x-axis of 420 pixels, and then the next one over is being sent at an x-axis of 960 pixels. So what it's doing is that full, you can't send a custom resolution over SDI, so it's a full 1920 by 1080, and ProPresenter is sending that image twice mirrored in just the center section of that SDI screen in order to then get cropped in the Novastar software. Then in looks, what we do is for your basic camera overlay lyrics, if I were to make this live, you'll notice that the media layer coming from the center screens now goes to those screens, and it's just the middle section of it cropped, which obviously isn't ideal. So we built a separate look here that is just the side screens running a prop. The prop layer is on the side screens, and then we designate what prop that we want to send there inside of your slides in ProPresenter. So for something like a worship song, if I were to go to their first worship song of the weekend this week, it's going to fire the worship look, which is that media layer just cropped. You're getting the center section of your media layer on each side screen, and that's how we handle all of this content. But if I go back then to the sermon and fire that sermon, it throws the prop up there, and we can send a different content to those side screens. All right, so that's how we get the video signals out of ProPresenter, and we send those out of ProPresenter using DeckLink Duos, and we actually have two outputs that are going into the processor from those DeckLink Duos. Like I said, they're normal 1920 by 1080 signals over SDI, and the way that we handle that in this Novastar processor is we can have up to 3 layers in this MX30 processor. What that means is each of these layers could be different inputs, or you could layer the same input, but you max out at 3 layers. And what I've got here is 1 layer handling both of those side screens together, which is why I'm having those mirrored that way, which is why I don't have it laid out exactly like it lays out here on the stage. We actually just slid these over so they're next to each other so I can send 1 video signal for both side screens. I just felt like that was the easiest way to manage that data in ProPresenter. And then the other 2 screens here, we have basically the same SDI input in the MX30 processor handling both of those screens, but it's basically the same image twice. Now, one thing that I figured out after we actually had this all set up is that you can actually take these layers and you could just layer panels over top of panels in the software, and it would send the exact same signal. So for instance, I can actually drag this panel here and I can move it over, and you'll notice on that top right panel there, we're actually seeing the signal from the other screen over on this, because you can basically layer panels on top of each other. And that's how this mapping software works, is you send signals to it, and then you can move the panels wherever you want inside of those layers and signals. So one little issue that we ran into while we were setting the screen up is there is a setting inside of this VMP software that is the brightness and chroma calibration, and it kept getting toggled on. And I don't know if you could see it up there, but we've got those panels above the letter King here. There was just some panels that actually showed up a little bit brighter when we turned that on. When we turn it off, it matches and looks great across the whole thing. So that's one thing to think about if you have one of these processors. Also, just how bright you're going to actually run this screen. Right now, we're on the bright side of what we generally recommend. We're at 65%, but they just look so good in this room. And they're not streaming. They're not live streaming from this location. So because of that, you can run them a little brighter. You're not trying to worry about the contrast between front lighting and screens quite as much. Most of the time when we do these altitude LED walls, we're running it right around 50% brightness in order to not overpower a camera signal, because a lot of times our cameras are getting the wall and the people in the front of the stage. One last thing to take note of if you're using video walls, especially if you're using a Blackmagic switcher like we are now. Now, this is a more recent problem that we've run into at a couple of our churches that we work with, and it is that the Novastar processors seem to not like the default SDI video output, and you have to change the type or the level of video output in order to make it work correctly with the Novastar processors. And that setting is found inside of the settings in your ATEM software control. It is just this set 3G SDI output 2. It is normally set to level B, which is normal. But when you set it to level B, you'll see the screens go completely a different color and a different format. They just look obviously terrible. So it messes up these MX30 processors. So set it back to level A and everything goes back to normal. So if you have a problem with your LED wall and you're using a Blackmagic switcher, that is something to check out.
Hope you guys found this video helpful for setting up an LED screen like this at your church. As I mentioned, don't forget to check out the free budgeting guide down below if you want to reach out to our team and talk about designing the right solution for LED screens at your church. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at altitudeled.com. Be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.